kind of like that song, except if you listen really, really closely at the end, there's this low pitch, like Indiana Jones evil guy thing going, and I didn't notice it until I had headphones on. Anyway, hello there, Internet. My name's John Kulas. I'm a 20-year professor of industrial and organizational psychology, 10-year user of R for traditional statistical applications, and for the last 7 or 8 years, I've also been using R to author things like papers and websites and slide decks and technical reports and feedback reports. So every week I get together with an increasingly dwindling number of collaborators. I'm going to have to start putting pressure on some of them, I think. But we get together and we just hold these open office hours, or I guess a hour, roughly an hour. We stick around. But we're here for anyone that's interested in learning about how to do this, or maybe you're just starting to do it and have some questions, or maybe you've done it for a while and just have run into an obstacle. We thought it'd be nice to have an interactive forum for this kind of thing, trying to publish author things all within the same platform. We thought it'd be nice to have this interactive opportunity as well as the many different online resources that are out there in a more static form. So, YouTube is a great resource to get over the hump if you're stuck on something. But again, sometimes it's good just to bend somebody's ear with some thoughts. So, because our intent is to have this as kind of an open office hour or shared problem solving kind of opportunity, but we haven't had a lot of takers on that. So what we've been doing is we've been focusing on just an issue, just a single issue each week in terms of using R as an authoring platform. And for the last 2 weeks, we've been talking about Pasquale, one of the co-hosts that shows up occasionally. Pasquale had a great idea a couple of sessions ago, a full year into doing these, but Pasquale a couple of sessions ago said, well, how do you just start doing this? Like, what? I don't know anything about it. What if I want to do this, but I'm not sure where to begin? So, 2 weeks ago, I guess 3 weeks ago now, we laid the foundation for some suggestions in terms of someone who might be curious about this. Where do you start? And last week uh, well, we'll see what happened last week. And then this week, we're going to address what we didn't quite get to last week, but intended to. And then we'll talk about sharing. So, sharing in the sense of hosting this such that other people can access the products that you're working on. So, everything that we've been doing in these weekly sessions, you should be able to, whoever the you is out there, you who's, should be able to take exactly what we're doing and replicate it on your own personal computer as long as you have R and Quarkto, that secondary that secondary software piece that we talked about 3 weeks ago that needs a separate installation. Um, However, if you follow the hyperlinks that I've been putting in the comments each week, you'll see that there's a second step there. So you can take the information that you publish locally and make it accessible such that other people can access it as well. So tonight we're going to talk about some different options in terms of doing that. Should be interesting because this computer that I'm using is already linked up to a bunch of these options. So I'm going to have to try to find a way to dissociate myself from those sharing platforms and then kind of reconnect. But we'll figure it out. Because every week when we do these explorations, they're rather unstructured, and it's just feature exploration. We also each week rehash and take a look back at what we did and try to present it in a little more linear fashion, a little more easily digestible for learning. So before we get into the sharing issue, let's see what happened last week.
Well, happy days are here again for Boris and Natasha. Boris sent Rocky and Bullwinkle into a secret missile base where they immediately ran into a minefield. Then there was General Consternation and his staff, who sent a couple of tanks out to investigate intruders. The two tanks ground to a stop at the edge of the minefield. Then suddenly a loudspeaker blared.
This is Major Hardrock of the Intruder Disposal Corps. You are to leave this area immediately.
But we can't. We're surrounded by landmines.
Yeah, and they go off real easy, too.
Why, if we was to just step over there... See what I mean?
See what he means? Yeah, I see what you mean there, Bullwinkle. So last week, we wanted to cover some customization options within your slide presentation. So 3 weeks ago, one of our suggestions on how to get started, if you don't do any of this stuff but are curious, we suggested taking one particular type of product, which is a slide deck. What you're looking at right now is a slide deck exactly the same as we're recommending you play with. And those slide decks are fairly straightforward to actually work with, and they tend to be smaller, so the scripting is smaller, so they're not quite as intimidating. But we started to talk about some ways to customize those slide decks such that it looks a little more consistent with whatever you're working with. And in order to do that, we needed to, well, we didn't need to, but we wanted to cover using different fonts, and we also wanted to cover using images. And so fonts, there's a few different ways to use fonts. We talked about the option of loading fonts locally on your computer, which can be a hassle. There can be administrator restrictions on doing that. But beyond those administrator restrictions, doggone it, hang on one second. That's not a frog. That's like Michigan J frog in my throat. Or I don't know, a toad maybe. Maybe it's a toad in my throat. I got something in my throat. But in addition to those administrator potential restrictions and obstacles that you might run into with locally loaded fonts, if you're on a different machine, that different machine also needs the fonts. So what we did was we actually used a bit of code that uses a Google API for their font system, and they have all kinds of different fonts. And the front matter here, I'll go ahead and paste this again. We pasted it last week, but it's not a bad idea to have this script available if you're interested in doing something a little fancier with your slides or any HTML product that you're trying to produce. All that needs to be changed there is the very last specification. So the last specification to the right of the equal sign, so family equals, you just put in verbatim whatever Google calls that font, and then it's available in the rendering session that you actually have. So this bit of code that you're seeing on the left here is in a chunk in our in our slide script, and we'll recreate that tonight so you can see what that actually looks like. But once we say that we're interested in a particular font, then in order to use it, we can get a little fancier. And so this scripting is called CSS, Cascading Style Sheets. I don't know it that well. I've only learned it to the extent that I've been using it within these slides. There is native CSS that supports these slides, but then there's also customized CSS that you can create yourself. This line 5 specification, as well as the line 11 specification following the dot convention, you can name that whatever you want. You just want to be careful that you don't name it one of those native functions. And typically what I've found is if you name it consistent with the naming convention of the font that you're interested in, then you're safe. So dot Nosifer, every time I see that, I think Nosferatu, because it's kind of this, well, you see it here on the right, it's this kind of bleeding, scary looking font. But you don't need color, you don't need font size. Those were just two parameters that we played with last week. If we were to play with those a little bit, the EM actually is a magnifying command. And so if we wanted to make the bleeding heavier there, we would just change our 0.7 to a 1.7. That means 1.7 times magnification of the typical rendering on a slide like this. You can see the chunk specification looks a little bit different here on line 71 than you're perhaps used to seeing if you've been watching these weekly tutorials. It's a CSS chunk rather than an R chunk. But if we go ahead and re-render that, we should see that our specification now for the application of that particular font is quite a bit bigger. And so there you see, it's actually so big that it's bleeding, no pun intended, or maybe intended, but it's bleeding off of the page a little bit. So if we were going to go live with this or share this, we would probably play with that a little bit and maybe alter that 1.7 down. Based on the layout that I currently have, it's not a great number. There's two different ways to utilize fonts. They both use this curly bracket with an indication of whatever you whatever you called your CSS command. So that's repeated in curly brackets. But then what you want to affect can be enclosed in straight brackets or square brackets, or it can be specified within fences. And again, my preference through doing this over the course of almost a couple of years now, I guess, is to generally lean towards the bracketed spans as opposed to the fenced divs. And so the fenced divs in Quarto specification use those 3 colons in sequence, and it just gets messy in your script. It gets really messy in terms of nesting those. So if there's a font nested within a different layout, it gets really kind of unwieldy. So these bracketed spans are a great way to render in your document a script that looks like what you want it to look like. And again, we kind of been defaulting to this badass specification for a hexadecimal code, and it renders as this. It's funny, it's almost the same as the some of the scripting within my CSS file here. Not quite, but kind of the same. That's not truly badass. What we wrote is badass. This is just badass facsimile. Facsimile? Fixsimile. I made up a new word. There you go. If you get nothing else out of tonight's session, you get Kulas made up a new word. In addition to fonts, we also played with images, and we talked about finding an image. So one of the tweaks that I guess I didn't show on tonight's session slides, but we played with last week, was changing the theming of your slides. So the theming is located in your YAML. And so again, I probably shouldn't show my full script because it's a little overwhelming, the amount of information I have in here. And the amount of information I have in here has been slowly built up over the course of, as I mentioned earlier, almost 2 years or a year and a half. And so that's why it looks so unwieldy. But I'm going to go to line 21 here where I have my theme specified. I'm also calling up a different style sheet because I have a lot of style specifications. I didn't just want to include that in a chunk in this document, but I want it in a location where I can call upon it in different within different documents that I'm trying to render. So I'm just going to change this the current slides that we see from, I think that was either Night or League as the theme, and you can see kind of whited out in the middle and then darker towards the edges. The default specification, it's going to change the fonts that are used, but it's also going to change the background most prominently, I think is what you'll probably see. And so here you're seeing the background come through in terms of completely black. I think there's also a beige option that will probably, and if this doesn't work, is that how you spell beige? Anyone out there? Let's do a quick, seems to me, I don't know, just looking at it, it looks like it should be B-E-I, not B-I-E. Yeah, it looks like my machine doesn't like that either. So we'll try the beige specification and see if that comes through any different. There we go. So now you're seeing this whited out background, and if you're going back and forth between. Wow, I look ghosted now too, off of the radiation from my screen. Um, but you're gonna see a difference in. Wow, look at how that script just looks terrible in this background. Um, but you're going to see potentially differences in your images and how they render based on the overall theme that you're using for your slides. And so what we wanted to be careful with is we wanted to find either PNG or SVG extension type file extension types, because those tend to be. I'm going to change this back to a theme that is less blinding, because I don't know, either that or I need to go get some sunglasses, and I have no idea where sunglasses are. I have one pair of sunglasses that I sometimes use, but I don't know where they are. They're for the summer, so they're for. Now I feel like I need to tell a story. They're actually motorcycle glasses. So when I only ride the motorcycle in the summer, so those glasses are associated with summer. So if you don't find a PNG, if you find a JPEG or other common image formats, along with that image might come the background itself. And so that's when the type of file really becomes important when you're including images on slides. You got to think about what the background looks like and whether or not the image that you're interested in, you're okay with that being displayed with a background or without a background. And actually, you can see, I didn't really notice it last week because we didn't spend a lot of time looking for an image, but you can see under the picnic, I gotta say it like Yogi, under the picnic basket handle here. I don't know if that was Bernie Sanders or that was Yogi, but it was one of them. Page, thank you, Ben, appreciate that. Did spell it wrong. But under the handle here, you're seeing some bleed through, and this is kind of what I'm talking about with the type of image. You got to be careful if it's a JPEG or even even if it is a PNG type, it might have a background associated with it, and you may want, depending on how particular you are with your styling, you may not want that. So PNGs tend to be the better option. And then there are some Quarto helper commands that are actually really helpful in terms of the placement of the image itself. And so a dot absolute, and again, you'll probably notice that this looks similar to the font specification when we used bracketed spans. These curly brackets are fairly common across Quarto applications in terms of trying to alter or tweak the way in which something is rendered. In this particular case, we're talking about images. And so that dot absolute, it has a bunch of different values that it can take. The ones that I tend to use most frequently, and this might be exhaustive, I'll have to check the help file on this, but you can go left, right, up, down. I think I just blessed people again. Every time I do, I'm not officially a Catholic priest, so it probably doesn't take, but consider yourselves blessed. So up, down, left, right are relative to the size of the display of information on your screen. So it's not what you're seeing rightmost, it's the rightmost corner of where information is displayed. And so you can go negative with these as well. One of the tricks with styling and layout of all of these types of considerations is numbers don't need to be only positive. And so if you really want to force something further left or further right or further up or further down, you can go into the negatives. But here you can see the Yogi image is situated leftmost on the page. So that 0, his foot is lining up with the edge of this tab set that you see in terms of fonts. And so that's where left is. And then the height, you can play with the height as well. And the height and the width, depending on the image that you're working with, will kind of travel with each other. So in most applications, you don't need to specify both height and width to get a rendering that you're interested in. Now, the one thing we did not get to last week was layout of information. And so For example, you see an image on the left and a little code on the right here. With fonts, you see code on the left and display of both how to request it and then what it renders like on the right. So I do want to spend just a little bit of time on layout because it's important, I think, if you want to really customize what your slides look like. And then we'll get into how to share that information in terms of publishing options. So as you're rendering these documents, everything that you need is going to be available to you locally on your computer. Sometimes information is tied to the central file itself, the central HTML file that your slide deck is formatted as. And so there's going to be multiple pieces of information that need to be shared online. Fortunately, there are a bunch of options for that. So if anyone is out there and you're interested in kind of looking ahead instead of listening to me yammer on about layout options for 10 or 15 minutes or so, you can just follow that hyperlink on the top of this slide here, and that hyperlink will take you to the page that we're going to go through that lists out a bunch of, and again, this is not exhaustive, but it's a bunch of kind of user-friendly options of routes to go to share the information that you've actually rendered. And you can see just a ton of them listed here. And again, this is not exhaustive. One thing that we haven't talked about, and maybe we will one of these weeks, is using GitHub or a service similar to GitHub that has a version control kind of capability built into it. It's the structure that me and my colleagues and collaborators have evolved to over the course of probably 7 or 8 years. So I think it tracks pretty well with the length of time that I've been using R as a authoring platform. But GitHub and associating with that requires a whole different set of requirements. So we probably won't look at that tonight, but we'll certainly look at some of the options that they have here available. And I can tell you what I do as well, which is the same flavor as what they have there, but it's a kind of older option. It's a legacy option that I'm still using. And you can probably get a sense of that from the URL. If you follow the slide deck, you can see that it's hosted on a Bookdown site. And Bookdown is one of the old R Markdown flavors, I guess. So there was Blogdown, there was Bookdown, there was all kinds of down-based packages depending on what type of product you wanted to render to. And so the beautiful thing about Quarto is they kind of encompassed all of those different types of products into one authoring platform, so you don't have to worry so much ahead of time about what you want the final product to look like. Now with Quarto, we can do mostly the same authoring and then make a later decision. I want a website, or I want a book. It's that sort of what seems like a consequential decision becomes it's not completely inconsequential, but it's less consequential early in your scripting process now that we've moved toward Quarto as kind of the second generation of R Markdown. Okay, so let's do a quick layout specification here. I am going to close out of my live stream script, which creates the slides that we were looking at and you have access to on the links. But we're just going to create a new, do I need to blow that up? Let me see if I can blow it up a little bit. The appearance, boy, it's been a long day. I'm gonna blow up the font and I'm gonna blow up the zoom just a little bit, see if that's better for people. Okay, and then we've had that issue in the past before with our studio in terms of that global option kind of blowing up too big when you blow it up, so big that you can't even close it. So I'm going to go to new file. I'm going to ask for a Quarto presentation. That's what we've been dealing with. Reveal.js, the default is the one we want. Title and author, you can leave those blank for now. We just want an empty file with the YAML, which is between lines 1 and 4 here. So the start of the YAML is 3 dashes, the end of the YAML is 3 dashes as well. And then it just comes in with some default content, including a sample code chunk. And so it's always a good idea to render those just to make sure that there's nothing goofy on your local machine that later that later um, that later might pop up when your content is more specific to your ultimate wish. So again, not a ton of content here. You can see that the default is to not reflect the code in that code chunk. So if we wanted that code to be displayed, we could use the Quarto specification of a hash pipe and say that we want that to be echoed. And then in that particular slide, if we go to it, you're going to see not only the result, but you're going to see our script, which isn't all that interesting right now because it's just saying, what's 1 plus 1. The nice thing about these code chunks as they're rendered is they have this built-in clipboard, and you can just click on that and copy. I don't know why we would want to click 1 plus 1, but I guess if we wanted to, paste it into our console, we could, just to make sure that 1 plus 1 indeed does equal 2. And it looks like we have confirmation now, or at least convergence of suggestions that 1 plus 1 is 2. Themes, if we wanted to add themes, we talked about themes last week. What I want to spend a little bit of time on tonight is layout. And so let's take a look at, let's just do the bulleted slide. So I'm going to get rid of, and again, in these presentation decks, a slide is just indicated either by a single or double heading, and a single or double heading is indicated in all these markdown documents just as a hashtag. So 1 hashtag or 2 hashtags. So not a very, I don't know, intriguing, I guess, slide deck at this point. It just has one substantive slide that talks about bullets. What I would like to spend a little bit of time on is the layout of slides like this. And so there's a couple of different ways to execute layout differences. And I think tonight, because we're already half hour in, unless there's a question, I think tonight we'll just deal with columns. So how to put information in different columns. And that it doesn't sound like it's a lot, but it actually can be a little tricky. There's 2 different ways to do this. Let's see if I can pull up the help page. And I am going to just Google it so other people can see as well how to find this information. And so let's see. We have image columns, column screens. So these are slightly different for images or code or code output. I'm looking for a more general specification of columns. So let's see. And a lot of the information, some of the information on these Quarto help pages are redundant with each other, but they are organized by the type of output that you want to render to. Here's, I guess, kind of one of the outputs I was looking for was, again, they're using these fenced divs. So the fences themselves are these sequence of colons. And there's an opening fence and there's a closing fence. And then there's this bit of curly bracket formatting that's saying this is what I want applied within these fences. Now here you start to see what I was complaining about with the nested fences, and it just gets to be quite a bit visually. So each of these fences needs to start and close with at least 3 colons. You can do more, and that helps a little bit with this nesting. There are, in addition to this column specification, there is also a layout specification. So like everything in R, typically we're talking about analyses, but even using R as an authoring platform, there are multiple ways of achieving the same end goal. The layout specification has not always worked as consistently for me as this specification has. So if we want to control where information goes, we're going to use this dot columns specification. And we should be able to take that and put it underneath. So if we want, for example, and to me, a nice layout here would be having this bit up above, kind of superordinate, and then maybe two different columns with bulleted information. So I'm going to actually just paste directly in the bit of code that we took from the multiple columns help page on the Quarto presentation help page. Now, it's just generally saying you can have some contents here and some contents here. I'm going to close out of that. And let's make these 50-50. If you go above 100 on this, so if we're talking about layouts, you can go negative. But if you go above 100 as a sum total on these column widths, it's not going to like that. It's going to throw you an error. But in terms of the contents, let's go ahead and put. I don't like the Quarto specification for bulleted lists. I prefer the old specification of much better. So what my expectation is, even though these bullets look a little different, and sometimes bulleted lists can be impacted by things like space above, space below. We'll try it and see if this will actually work. But our expectation is we're going to have a page with bullets on it. The column spanning information is going to be when you click the render button, a document will be generated that includes. The columns should then start after that, and I expect equally spaced columns such that the left-hand column is going to have these 2 bullets and the right-hand column is going to have these 3 bullets. So let's go ahead and render that and look. Oh, that looks fine. If you'll note that the wrapping is automatic. That's kind of a neat feature of these HTML files. You don't have to get specific with actual wrapping. You can play with this all you want. If we wanted to do 3 of them, you can do 3 of them. Hey, look at this.
Vamos a ver, ¿qué es lo que pasa con los alcaldes? ¿Qué es lo que pasa con los alcaldes? ¿Qué es lo que sí, qué está pasando con los alcaldes?
Hey, hello. What's up?
Diego, I'm glad you're here. I was just getting sad I was telling people at the beginning I was sad that I wasn't getting a bunch of collaborators showing up.
Well, here I am to save the day. I see you're creating columns. You're doing a PowerPoint thing?
Yeah, so the last 3 weeks we've been talking about Pasquale wanted to kind of help. He wanted a pathway to start. Like, where do I start on all this stuff? And so we suggested to start out with a slide deck. And so we've talked about using a slide deck. We talked about putting images in there. We talked about fonts. And then the last thing that I wanted to touch on was columns. Now, you have to you can't go above 100, but you can go less than 100 if you want. So if we wanted to put these down to 20, 20, 20, we could do that. And that becomes important because if you have 3 columns, you might want to actually put some space between them. And so one way to, again, there's multiple ways to do that, but one kind of hacky way to do that is to add empty columns. And since I only have 60, I'm just going to do a 40%. And you can start to see where all of these fences just get, it's too much. It's like way too much. But now you can actually see the rendering of that such that there is space here in the middle. It's a fourth column. It's just empty. So you obviously wouldn't want to do it exactly like that, but you could do it 25, 25, 25. And then something like a 12 and 12. And that would be a little, that would render a little more nicely in terms of spacing. So you can play with spacing all you want. You can change the font size, and that helps a little bit as well. But today what we're going to focus on is publishing. And so let me get back to the
20
actual
different titles.
do what?
That's what I noticed when you said that Pasquale asked you where to start, and I see
Yeah.
there's like 20 different untitled tabs, and I'm like, yeah, that's usually right when you want to start with R. That's how you end up about 20 minutes in.
Yeah, no, I have my computer set up such that, and it's not for these types of files. It's for PDFs. So when I'm doing PDFs, I have new tabs open up in Microsoft Edge for each new rendering of a PDF. That way, I don't get any conflicts, and that way they just kind of add to each other. So the same thing is happening now with these HTML files. But yeah, it's not quite Dr. Dan bad yet, but it's getting there. Diego, do you ever share anything? Do you ever host anything on like a slide presentation or a website, or because I think I might be hooked up. So what I'm getting at here is I might ask you to walk through this. We'll try first. We'll see if I can do it. But if I can't do it, I might ask to see if you can actually do it.
Yeah,
So-
so to host it, or just to share the screen with whatever you published.
Well, you would have to create a slide, and then we would walk through how you can host it, assuming that you're not currently linked up to one of these. I know you're currently linked up to Shiny.io, to Shiny Apps.
Yeah, that's the only one. I'm not hosting anything anywhere.
Okay. Well, let me show what happens on my computer, and I'm already set up to host. So in my RStudio, and I set this up through RStudio, I have a publish button on my presentation pane. So this is my preview pane. When I render a document, it comes up here. Now I have it linked to me through 3 different hosting platforms. Now, the one I think that Quarto pubs might be the same, I'm guessing, as our pubs, but we'll see here in a second. So I'm going to see if I can actually, in terms of all of these options on the linked page, I'm going to see if I can start with Quarto pub.
This would be for a PowerPoint, right?
Yep, it would be for a presentation deck. So the first thing to do is to get a Quarto pub. You know what? I don't know that I want to screw up my account. So Diego, if you're okay with it, do you want to share and then walk through signing up?
Sure. Let me share
Okay.
screen.
I'm going to put this in the chat as well.
Okay. Let me open R.
Yeah, so maybe open R and then do a new presentation, Diego. Just do a default Quarto presentation, and we'll see if we can publish that.
Or you can just pull the slides and just do the thing that you were creating now.
Sure, if you want to. I didn't push that one, but I have all kinds of other stuff up there. So when Diego and I say push and share and things like that, that's part of our workflow. We share through GitHub.
And we could technically also put the PowerPoint presentation in GitHub, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Post it
So
there.
yeah. So, and we do have stuff hosted on GitHub as well. We have a couple of presentations on there. We have conference presentations on there. You remember that, Diego? Remember when we put up conference posters?
Yeah.
That's like a different beast almost entirely. So that's, on that one, when you're doing GitHub, well, depending on how you do it, I guess, but the default way to do it and easiest way to do it on GitHub is to make sure that the file that you want to share is called index. Now, what we're talking about tonight doesn't have any such restrictions. You can refer to your files, whatever you want to locally call them that are meaningful to you. And that's actually fine. Oh, you pulled one of our presentation QMDs?
Yeah, the one from last week, I think.
Okay. So Diego is rendering a present.
There we go.
Right?
So this one was from last
Oh,
week.
that's an early one. No, I think that's like the second one that we ever did.
No, it says here February 4th.
I know because I cheat. So if you look at that QMD script, Diego, yeah, it's session 3. But if you look at the QMD script, it's somewhere it's going to say what's the date on line 18. It looks like. See that? Yeah.
No, it's the system. Oh, yeah.
I'm actually asking it just to pull up the system date. So every time I render these files, I got to make sure to publish them the day that we're having these sessions. But that's fine. That's fine. Let's see if you can set up so you have now a presentation that's a candidate to publish. Let's see if you can set up a Quarto pub file or account. So you're going to want to do a Google search or navigate to Quarto pub. I put it in the chat, but I don't think you're going to be able to access that hyperlink because you're basically like an admin.
Yeah, I would have to go here to the comments.
That's okay. I think you can get it from where you were at. I'm going to try to pull up on my screen as well. Do you see an option on there for signing up for an account? There you go.
Here.
Okay.
Oh, this is interesting. Okay, sign up for Quarto Pub. I'll sign up. I can sign up with GitHub, right? Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay. It's saying, so while you're doing that, I'm just reading some of the restrictions, and a lot of the shared hosting sites that we're yeah.
Oh no, my little novel.
Oh no, your
Wait,
little.
Did we do this before? Why is this here? Manage profile and tokens.
Well, the only thing I see is Figgy, but that's from GitHub, right?
Yeah. But wait, is it?
Is that the email address you used?
No, for GitHub, now I have a different one. That's the one that screwed up things. Um, yeah, for my GitHub, I have a different one. Maybe I already created this years ago and I forgot. I don't know.
Well, that's part of the issue. Is I think I have too many of those too. Yeah, I see. Max says I love it when you have guests. I love it when I have guests too, Max. I gotta incentivize them, get them here more often. They're too busy. These guys, they're too popular. They're too busy.
But yeah, well, that's good. We have a thing then. So, what do we created now? So what do we do next? We go to publish now.
Well, so what it's suggesting you do next is in the terminal, and this might scare some people, but in the terminal, type Quarto space publish. Now, I wonder, this might work best if we're in a project folder, but we are in a project folder, so, right?
We're in live streams.
All right,
But I can
good.
change it.
No, that's fine. We'll screw that up too. We'll try, because we're trying to show other people how to do this. We'll try to do it as messed up ish as possible. We'll see if we can screw things up, because we know we can unscrew them. Did you hit return or not?
No. Let's see. Quarto publish. It's not a website, manuscript, or book part, so cannot be published. Huh. Okay, so I need to create like a Quarto book or presentation.
Sorry. Try Quarto publish again, and then space Quarto dash pub.
Okay.
Same issue.
Well, this is different. Error published in source Quarto not found. Huh?
You have Quarto installed on that computer, right?
Yeah, now it gives the same mistake. It's error website is not a website, manuscript, or book project, so cannot be published. I mean, I can just create one really quick. Create a Quarto project.
Well, we want to be able to share these presentations. It should be able to do a presentation as well. Just looking. I wonder if we need to play with the configuration on Quarto Pub now that you have an account there. And then if we don't make progress there, maybe we'll try, because there's one thing about this I don't like. I don't like that they want us to use the terminal, because that's going to scare some people away, I think. I like, when we're in our studio, I like having the push button option. It does say, it doesn't explicitly say presentations. You're right, Diego. It says documents, websites, and books. Although documents, I mean, I don't know. Do you consider a presentation to be a type of document? Because I think I kind of
Yes.
do.
Okay, so I tried to publish this. I don't know what this is. A website.
What? See, that's how awesome this is in terms of making different things. You just made a website and didn't even know what it was. I love it.
So it gave me this on the terminal. Okay, it's Posit Connect. It gave me providers, being Quarto Puff one of them.
I can't quite make that out.
It's like
There we
this.
go. Okay, I gotcha. Uh, yeah, okay. Well, I think that's progress. Can we see if we can go to Quarto Pub on that? Is there? I mean, in the terminal, is there a way to actually hard return off of Quarto Pub? It looks like you got. Looks like you lost your cursor. Right? Oh, there we go.
Oh, there. Authorize, yes or no. You need to authorize your account again. Here, press enter, right to authorize. Okay. Yes.
You know, I wonder why we didn't get that
Allow.
same. I wonder why we didn't get that same pull-down menu with the presentation. So Diego, so did it take you there for authentication, or did you just do that?
It took me there.
So it took you to the Quarto Pub page. So you had a Quarto Pub account. We said Quarto Publish, and then chose Quarto Pub. You said yes, authorize, and then it took you to Quarto Pub, right?
Yeah.
And then what did you do once you were there?
I clicked allow,
Oh,
and then it told me, okay, blah blah blah. You can close this window. So I closed it,
okay.
but now I don't see any difference here. It didn't add the new website.
Well, what's in the terminal? It looks like the terminal is it.
Use
You
another
can.
name.
I
Oh,
think you want.
Quarto. Oh yeah, it's asking me if I want to use the same name as the project.
Yeah, I think that's fine, right?
Quarto rendering for publish. Oh, there we
So
go.
actually, that isn't bad, but we need to find one that does slides, which I think will be okay. So this looks to me like it's gonna work.
There we go. All we had to do was read. Who would have thought?
Readings for suckers. Okay.
There.
And now you should on the right somewhere. Do you have like a URL that other people can access?
Here. Oh, there. Here. On the left. Yeah, I think this is the URL. Let me copy and send it to you.
Yeah, if you
See if
put
we
it in
can
the
enter.
put it in the comments, maybe we'll try it.
Let's see. Put it in the comments. Chat. Damn it.
And then
Okay, I'll put it in the private chat.
well, can we put it in the main? Can I put it in the main one, Diego, so other people
Yeah,
can?
yeah.
Okay,
It's just that it's not letting me publish for some
gotcha,
reason.
gotcha.
This comment has failed to post to forensic psychometrics.
Maybe some rights or something. Um, can you, Diego? Do you mind going back to that slide presentation?
Yep. the one over here?
The the slide deck that you rendered that was session number 3.
Oh,
Because I think one of the options in addition to the terminal, if you're in RStudio, there should be a kind of walkthrough button option as well. Now you're gonna take a different one now, aren't you?
no, take this.
No, you can take a different one. I'm curious if they still render after a year or so, because I don't. I've been pulling images just from the internet. I wonder if any of those links are going to be dead.
Probably, yeah, eventually. You should just put the image instead.
Yeah, but do you see how crowded that folder already is?
Yeah, I mean, even if it gets more crowded, at this point, it's not going to be noticeable. It's already too crowded. You might as well. Okay, so let's just publish it. And this time, how about we do it here using the button?
That's what I'm thinking too.
Republish.
Did you render it?
Render it? No. Quarto publish. I rendered it before. But
Okay.
yeah, it gives me that error. It doesn't like it because it's not a website.
Can you?
But if we render it, it works. Let's pick another one. Let's pick this one from November. Survey down. Okay, I'll install it.
So I think you're.
And last week I learned about parallel analysis for EFA. I've been doing those. I should have done the graphical one.
So you're knee deep in scree plots.
Yep.
Do you know why they call them scree plots? Diego, I think you need to render that QMD.
Okay.
You know why they call them scree plots?
No.
Because scree is the rubble that accumulates at the bottom. Oh, yeah, it's yours. It's one of your sessions. Getting figgy with it.
Oh yeah.
Scree is the rubble that accumulates at the bottom of a cliff, and the eigenvalue organized in descending order of magnitude tends to look like scree. So in your RStudio, let's look for a publishing button option before we go to the terminal and see if we can rectify the terminal thing. The terminal is terminal. So there's a publish button for you. It looks to me like there's a publish button in your scripting pane. Is that right?
Yeah, here.
Okay.
Okay, preparing to publish, and then it gives me these options. RPubs.
So
Awesome.
the most flexible seems to be Posit Connect. So my recommendation, if we're looking to host, would be Posit Connect. You typically only need to share the document only. You don't need the code. So what that means is the QMD file is not important.
Oh, good. It only puts like the HTML or
HTML.
whatever.
Well, there might be other files. Yeah, there might be like image files and other things that they need to grab as well. Now, Diego, that one that you're sliding around, did that pop up again?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not connect. Okay, this is the bit that gets a little tricky. So it's asking for Posit Connect account. Is that right?
Yeah, enter the public URL. I cannot magnify. How do you do it? Alt plus. plus.
Sorry, so I'm pulling up Diego Mind to see if I can kind of help with some of this stuff. So if you go, well, you can try to problem solve the way you're doing it if you want. But if you go back within our studio, I think we can maybe try to connect that way as well.
Okay.
So I think you can. Yeah. Well, try putting in there bookdown.org and see what happens. And then if you need to go off screen for a second, Diego, to do passwords and stuff, you want me to pull you off screen?
Yeah. Let me stop sharing.
See this balloon, Jen? I gotta burst it. But I'm not gonna tell you when. Do you feel stressed, Jen? Jen! Look at that! That's your peace of mind. It's gonna go bang. Do you feel stressed now, Jen? Do you? Evidently not.
So that's the tricky part, I think, in the connection. And so there's a point at which it's going to ask you for a URL, and the URL should be one of these existing hosting sites. And so the kind of legacy one that I'm using, we're going to see if Diego can connect to it, but that existing one is bookdown.org.
Okay, it says connection successful.
So you want to share screen again, Diego? So we took him off screen just so he wasn't sharing password, and then we'll revisit what he actually did here in a second. Okay. So now, Diego, if you go back to your RStudio and we tried to publish again.
Okay, connect account.
Good. So previously when we went through this window, that upper right-hand pane was empty, correct? Didn't have anything on there?
Yeah, nothing here. Now it has Diego Figgy booked
No,
down.
it has Diego. So let's try to just see if you can publish. Is that grayed out?
Yep. Let's see if I
Okay.
call it.
So the step was, once we got to the Posit Connect window that said connect an account, we just gave it that URL. So now, Diego, the one thing you want to do, so using Posit's going to kill me showing people Bookdown because I think they're trying to grandfather this, but not that many people watch us anyway, so it probably doesn't matter. But Diego, the one thing to do here before you exit this screen is on the right, it gives you different sharing permissions. And so you probably want to click the anyone link just a little bit. There you go. Then save that. Now, the URL is in the lower right hand window. If you copy that, you should be able to share that. You can put it in the if you can't do it in the public comments.
There we go. Looks
Okay.
like-
So I'll put that in the. Let me see if I can access it then. Whoop! I put it back. Put it back in the wrong one. So now, if I'm interested. By the way, so what Diego did was, you can also do it by going to Tools. If you're in RStudio, Global Options, um, Publishing, and then I already have them populated, but on the right here there's a connect. And so he did connect, he did posit connect, and then this is where you put in bookdown.org. And so this is the location where you get set up. What was I going to? Oh yeah, I was gonna actually see if I can access your slides. Oh, there they are. I'm not getting the picture. So I'm not getting the picture. Now, do you have 2 seconds more, Diego?
Yeah.
So let's have you share screen again. And let's see why that picture's not coming through. Now, it could be that I'm just not patient enough and we should have let it go. But, oh, do you see on line 5 there? Oh, God.
I think there's a fire. You hear that?
Yeah. Do you want to go? Do you need to
Yeah.
go?
I'm
All
gonna
right.
go check that out.
All right. I'll see you, Diego. So Diego, I'm going to kick him off of here. I muted him. I don't know. We'll see if Diego shows. Tune in next week to see if Diego's all right or not. But what is happening there with Diego's publishing, I think, is that there's a local image that isn't being published. So in that window, there is the option to add further files. So if Diego were to go back and republish and just include a file that isn't included by default, then it would actually be available to everyone online. Okay, so next week, because we were a little rushed here at the end, next week will be good, I think, because it will be good to put together in a more linear format. There he is. You're alive.
Yeah. Yeah, the chicken is not so alive though.
There's a cooked chicken. Diego, one thing I was going to say is if we can try to republish that with, if you open up RStudio again. Now, if you can republish, and now you're already linked, so we don't have to do that connection. But at the bottom of that left-hand pane, is there a add files option?
Add more. It says here.
Okay, so let's look for the actual image, and I think it was in. Was it in the IMG folder? So in the YAML, we're gonna have to look and see what that image was that we.
What's the image?
I don't know what the title is. I mean, you can put whatever you want. You can put any of those images on there. Just pick one, I guess. Or no. I'm sorry. You can't do that because
The name.
because the name is important. So if
It
you
has to be
move it,
Figgy.
yeah. What is it?
Figgy, but it has the address there. Image Figgy.
Okay, but you're already in the image folder, right? So if you just look for Figgy, oh, there it is.
Figgy here.
Yeah. So include that.
DaVinci.
There you go. Now publish again. So now that file, which again, typically I'm pulling these images from URLs on the internet, but they should be now available. And it didn't ask you to resave anything. So if we were to if we were to re-access your shared file now, so I'm gonna go book down, Diego Figgy, 1126. So you want to do another? You want to do a parallel analysis session?
Yeah, that would be nice.
I'm okay with that. So now it's coming up. So that's great. It looks like maybe are we missing? Looks like we're missing something here. So we would have to look back in that slide deck and see. That arrow is pointing at nothing right now, but there's probably something in the QMD that says, you know, should be looking here. But okay, cool. So we don't need to do the. I mean, do you want to do a parallel analysis one within the next couple of weeks?
If you want to, unless you have something else planned.
Well, I mean, there's always something. I mean, we're kind of done with the where to begin now. After next week, after I put this together in kind of a more digestible format with steps in terms of how to link to the bookdown.org site, you know, we're up for whatever. I've been kind of saving the quantitative ones for sessions that you fully cover. But if you want to do one of them together, I'd be up for that too. We could tweak it to have it a little more authoring oriented if we took the parallel analysis and made it a prettier graph. We could do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds good.
All right. Well, I mean, are you gonna be here next week? Because I don't want to do this if you're not. Because you'd be the lead. You'd be the lead. I'd be your assistant.
Yeah, I can bring some data. Yeah, and I'll be the lead.
Okay. I'll put together a slide deck, but then I'll expect you to go ahead and do the analyses, and then I'll jump in to help with formatting, I think.
Okay.
Okay, cool. That'll be fun. Do you want to frame it as, you want to just call it parallel analysis, or do you want to call it scree plot interpretation, or what do you want to call it?
I think parallel analysis is good.
Okay. All right. Well, I should be able to find a nice picture for that with like some gymnast on parallel bars or something.
But the parallel analysis I did was to figure out the number of factors, just empirically. So that's what I would be doing next week.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm fine with that. I want you guys to, you know, want to present stuff. So if that's what it is, that's what it is. Like I said, we can tweak it to fit the authoring thing a little bit, just in terms of the formatting of the plot itself. So I think we can play with that.
Okay,
It's
sounds
like an
good.
authoring project. All right. Thanks, Diego.
Okay, have a good night. Good
All
night,
right. You
dinner.
too. All right.
Bye, everyone.